Today is a sewing technique video, and even though I don't like sewing inseam pockets, I know you do, so I have a tutorial for you. No shortcuts, done very precisely, step by step, so you can put them everywhere. Stay tuned. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today is about pocket sewing. I know I have been skipping pockets forever and ever. I think in the last couple of years I've sewn maybe 2 or 3 inseam pockets. And it's basically because they were part of a pattern test and they were not optional, so I couldn't just bow out of them. But in my own sewing, when I'm showing you pattern reviews, I usually mention, oh, and there's inseam pockets there if you like them, but I just never sew them. I have come to a conclusion that it's not just about what I like. I know a lot of you would like to see a pocket tutorial. I decided I would film one for you, and with a little bit of a compromise. There is one type of inseam pocket that I do not like and I will never sew, and they are just a standalone pocket that looks like a T shape that's attached to the hip but not attached to anything up on the top. Would be the type of pocket you have on a dress or maybe a skirt. They sit a little lower and they just sort of flap and hang around in there without being anchored onto anything. And those are the pockets I really dislike. But I have sewn a few of these inseam pockets that are actually anchored on the top to a type of waist seam. So it could be attached to a waistband if you're sewing skirts or pants, culottes, shorts, that sort of thing. Or it could be attached to a waist seam if it's a bodice sewn onto this skirt that has these type of pockets. That means that the top is fixed, it's not going to move anywhere. The pockets are going to be flush on the front against your legs, and they're not going to be moving around and creating extra bulk and that uncomfortable feeling around the hips that the other type of inseam pocket creates. The way that you sew them is very similar. I would say it's almost the same. Just because I'm going to show you these that are anchored on a seam on the top, it doesn't mean that you can't use this tutorial to sew the other ones, because instead of just anchoring it on the seam, your pocket will be rounded all the way up to the top. That's the only difference, but the way that you sew them and create the pocket entrance, the way you stabilize all this is the same. I'm going to be showing you all these sewing clips on woven projects, but if I was putting these types of pockets on a knit garment, if I would do it exactly the same. I would use non-stretch interfacing to stabilize the pocket openings, the side seams on a knit garment if I was going to put them in there. So there's absolutely nothing I would do different, including what I would serge. Everything would be exactly the same for a knit or a woven. There's nothing I would do differently. Okay, so what happens if you have a dress or any pattern that you wish had really nice big pockets, but the pattern that you're working with that you like doesn't have them? Don't let that stop you. I'm going to show you how you can create your own pocket piece from your pattern piece that you have there. You'll be able to put these on anything and everything that you like. You can even regulate how big you want the pocket to be and how big you want that entrance of the pocket to be. I'm going to give you some general guidelines. So let's see. I'm going to show you how you can easily make your own pocket piece if you have a pattern that doesn't have one. You don't have to rely on other pocket pieces from other garments. You know, you can just make your own for whatever you're using. This is a skirt piece, this is a side seam, you know, this could be pants, it could be shorts, it could be a dress that has a separate skirt and a bodice up there. It could be anything, right? But it has a waist. That's the important part. So I'm just going to slide a piece of paper underneath my pattern here. Get a ruler that marks inches. I'm just going to give you general guidelines. Let's make our pocket 10 inches long here on the side. And from the top waist, make it 3 inches here. So this is going to be 10 inches long. That's how big the pocket piece is going to be. Where it says 9 inches, mark another one. That's actually where you're going to sew your pocket up to. You're going to have a 6-inch entrance there for your hand. You can see me put my hand in there and I've got plenty of space. Now just use your hand as a reference or whatever you think you need to put in your pocket. Look at this, a phone, okay? So from here, from where I drew that line at 10 inches, just start drawing a curve and just be creative. Make it as big as you need it for whatever you think you need to put in your pocket. Make it go all the way up to the top. Maybe this curve is, maybe I want to make it straighter right there. The paper I'd used wasn't long enough. For this size pocket that I drew, I needed to have 2 papers there. So I'm just going to put this back and just retrace it. It's very easy. I've already drawn it here. So I'm just going to align this to the edge of the paper right there. Trace my top again, which is the waist. So now I'm just going to take my tracing wheel and just trace what I marked here freehand. You know, there's no rules. It doesn't have to have a particular shape. Just make it rounded, and then it will end right there at the 10-inch mark. Now I can see the little dots there, and I can draw these. And you'll have the same shape as the side seam of the garment you're making. If you try to use a different pocket, it will have a different shape for side seams, and it's not necessarily going to fit the shape of the waist either. Borrowing a pocket from something else sometimes might work, but sometimes it might not. Okay, and this is going to be the pocket piece for this specific garment. Now, we had drawn some marks here, 3 inches down from the top. That will be the start of the pocket entrance. And here as well, 1 inch above that, you have a 6-inch entrance there. Make sure you mark these notches on your side seams and on your pockets so it's easy for you to align them when you're sewing. Also mark your grain line on this pattern piece. You can see it's slanted there. So my grain line mark is over there. Make sure you find a parallel line to that. There, and then just cut 4 of these, 2 from your main fabric and 2 from a lining fabric, and you'll be set to go to add these types of pockets to anything that has a waist. Pants, skirt, a skirt attached to a bodice. It's going to match the shape of the pattern piece you want to add the pocket to without needing to rely on other pockets from other patterns if the design doesn't have it, you know. Another example where you might want to make your own pocket is if the pattern that you have has a pocket but it's very tiny. Look at it, it's very small. It will barely fit your phone, it will barely fit your hand maybe, and you just want to make a huge one. You can make your own huge one even if your pattern already has a pocket. Like, look at the, if you want to compare the difference here, you're going to have a lot more space there. Don't think you can't change your pockets. Don't think you can't like make them bigger or just make your own. You can. And then you can have the humongous pocket you really wanted. Okay, just like a little recap, if you want to make a pocket in a similar size, of course you can make them whatever size you want. Remember, from the edge of the side seam down, we have 10 inches. From that 10 inch, mark 1 inch up, and that's where your pocket entrance will be. And then from the top, mark 3. So from 3 to 9 here, you have 6 inches to put your hand in. Now, if you take your ruler from that top and measure down, you have about 13 inches in length at the bottom. And then you just have a curve. And at the widest part, the pocket here is 8 inches across. And on the top, that will include the waist, you have 5 inches there. So I'll put all the measurements here on the screen if you want to take a screenshot, but remember, just have fun with it, create your piece, create your pocket, the one that's going to hold what you want to carry, and have fun with it. And remember, it's best to create a pocket from the actual pattern you want to add the pockets to, because then you're sure that the side seams are going to have the same shape and the waist is going to have the same shape. You can also trace out a pocket from fabric. If you already have a garment that's made, you can trace it around the shape that your fabric has instead of the actual paper. You see there that some patterns might have a pocket piece for you there, but it might look really small. Just compare it to your hand and see if you like the size. You are always welcome to change that and just make it bigger. There's no one telling you that you're not allowed. So make your own pocket piece. If you find that the one the pattern has is small, that is something that you can customize for sure. As well as you can customize your fit, you can customize functional aspects like this. And I know a lot of you like humongous pockets. That's why I made a really big pocket that can fit a pretty large phone. Now, whether you made your own pocket pieces like the one I've just shown you, or you have ones from a pattern, the way that you sew these will be exactly the same. The way that you're going to prepare these pockets, the way I'm going to finish all these edges is always going to be the same. So let's see how to prepare some pockets and some basic concepts that will help you when you put your pockets together. Have a clean finish inside and not have any raw areas, not worry about how to finish seams while you're sewing the pocket, because it could get pretty tricky. It's just easier to serge everything before even starting the pocket. So just serge your side seams separately, There's no rule that says that they have to be serged together. You can serge them separately. You can see a little white strip of interfacing there on the pocket entrance. That's where it is on this sample that I'm sewing. You can also fuse interfacing on your pocket pieces. You need to have something stabilized, either the pocket pieces or the actual skirt piece or pant that you're sewing on the side. I have 2 pocket pieces here. The one that is contrasting, that is not the same as the main fabric, will be sewn onto the front side seam, and the one that has the same fabric like this will be sewn onto the back. This curve at the top will meet the waistline, so that doesn't need to be serged because it will be enclosed in a seam or a waistband, but we do need to serge everything else. So from here around all the way up, serge it all, and then there will be no raw edges anywhere. This is just scrap fabric, but you can see here what are the main components of these pockets that you need. This is the top waist, so this could be the edge of pants, it could be the edge of a skirt, or it could be a skirt attached to a bodice. The important thing is that this tab is anchored up here. It's not just starting below and hanging over here on its own. It is fixed up there, which makes it move less and will probably make it open up less at the hips. So you have side seams. I have fused a strip of interfacing along the edge right there on both of these. One will be the front side seam, one will be the back piece. And on every single pattern you'll find a series of notches. You'll find either a single notch down there that will match the edge of the pocket right there, and you'll find one above. If you don't find one up higher, just calculate like 1.5 inches from the top, and that'll be where the pocket starts. I would not want a pocket to start directly on the seam of a bodice. It should start a little lower than that. The main concept for these types of pockets is that you have a front side seam, and what you're going to sew onto this front side seam is a lining fabric. So it can be anything lightweight that does not have to be the same as the main fabric. You can use the main fabric if you want, if your main fabric is light enough. But if you're working with a little heavier fabric, I wouldn't use something heavy right here, just to avoid the bulk. So you would just line this up at the side seams and sew. The other main concept is that on the back side seam, you will be sewing on the pocket bag that has the same type of fabric. And that's because of the way the pocket is worn when you put your hands inside. This is the fabric that might be seen when you just put your hand in there. Those are the common concepts. You'll sew a lining contrasting on the side seam of the front, and you'll sew a pocket bag that has the same fabric as the main fabric on the back side seam. But let's see how to sew this on a proper garment. I just wanted to show you what my preparation would be, which is to serge the side seam separately, serge the whole pocket bag all around, with the exception to the front top edge, because that will be anchored into something, and then we can just go ahead and sew. So in the example that you're going to see, nothing has been serged, and that's because it's a coat and it will be lined, so it wasn't necessary for me to finish the seams. But if I was doing this on an unlined garment, I would serge them, and this is how it would look. Today is Thursday, late Thursday, and tomorrow, Friday, at Love Notions, the feature Friday pattern is the Sybil Illusion skirt collections. And I've done videos about this skirt before. It is one pattern that has 7 skirt types in there. So you can make so many garments and styles with just one pattern. And the pattern has had a sizing update. So it now includes up to 5X, up to a 59.5-inch hip. So it'll serve a lot more people. And one change that was made during the whole retest and update was adding these types of anchored pockets if you want to add them onto the skirts. You know, and what I've decided from many years ago is that I don't add these types of pockets to garments that have negative ease at the hips. So to something tight like a pencil skirt, I wouldn't want to add these pockets because they will gape, and there's nothing you can do about that really, because there's negative ease there. You know, the garment is smaller than your hips. But if you have a knit skirt that has an A-line shape or swing style half circle or with pleats, then I possibly might consider adding pockets there to the side seams. And I'm happy that these pockets are anchored up on the waist, just like the tutorial I've shown you. That's how you'll find the pockets in the Sybil Illusion skirt collection. So keep your eyes open for the sale tomorrow. It'll be only $5. And then Saturday and Sunday, it will be discounted to $10. The regular price is $14. So it's a good time to get it on Friday. And I will be uploading a little video with all my versions in under a minute. I know a lot of you like watching those. It's fun to put them together as well. And I will be sewing 2 more. And I'm really debating if I'm going to add pockets or not, because I just prefer pockets on wovens. But that's just my decision making. You might really want to put pockets into your knit garments. I'm going to show you only the pockets of this beautiful coat I've made. That is a pattern that will be released months from now. So I'm not going to give you any detail about it. I'm only going to show you the pockets. And this is the pocket entrance. It fits my hand. You never want a pocket entrance that's super big. And this opening here is fine if it's 5 or 6 inches. It doesn't need to be bigger than that. You can see that when you put your hand in, you will see the main fabric here that is the same, and that is the back. And when you open here, you'll have lining fabric. In my case, it's purple. It's understitched, perfectly hidden in there, and it's super neat right there. You wouldn't even tell that there's a pocket right there. The sewing of this specific pocket is what you're going to see. No shortcuts, all the little details, all the things you need to do to have really nice pockets. And you'll see that with this one, none of the edges are finished. And it's because it's a coat and it's lined. I really did not need to serge anything, and that's why you see the edges are raw there. But you've seen how I would prepare previously a pocket to be used on a dress or something that, you know, will not be lined, that everything was serged. But the sewing process will be the same, so let's see. At the earlier stages when we were doing preparation work like stay stitching and interfacing, the pockets were interfaced here between the notches. For both the lining and the main, you have 2 of each. They are all interfaced within the seam line, so you are not interfacing right up to the edge, sort of pushed back so that your seam allowance will have interfacing there. You can use stay tape. I just cut strips of fusible interfacing, and we will start attaching the lining pieces to the front skirt. This is the front skirt side piece. There will be a center piece sewn there, but we won't worry about that now. You will see these same 2 notch marks here on the hip that will match the lining pieces here, but we will work from the right side of the fabric. These are the 2 hips. We'll place these right sides together like that, and matching those notches, we will sew from there to the very end of these pockets. Both lining pieces are right sides together, matching the hip line, matching that notch there and that notch there on the other side as well. You can see they match perfectly. And now we will sew this from the top to the bottom. You can see that this pocket reaches the seam of the waist, so this pocket will actually be caught in the waist seam, so you won't have a pocket that's moving around too much inside. After sewing the pocket lining to the front side piece on the hip between the notches, I have changed my thread to purple because that's the color of my lining. I will open this, making sure the seam allowance is underneath the pocket, and sew on the edge that's under stitching, and we'll keep the pocket inside. That's how that looks, and I'll repeat on the other pocket. Here I have the side back skirt. Those are the hip notches right there on both sides. I will also place these right sides up. This is the hip right there. You will never go wrong if you match your notches. You have 2 of them there that will match the pocket. It's really hard for you to sew them on the other side. And we have the main pocket bags that are made from the same fabric. We place them right sides together here. And we do exactly the same that we've done with the lining. Exactly the same. Sew all the way down. Okay, after doing that, open up the seam, make sure the seam allowance is pointing towards the pocket, and sew on the edge. That's done there, and now repeat on the other pocket, and then we can put these together the lining pocket with the main pocket and sew the side seams. Okay, so here we have the side back skirt. This is going to be the hip there. We've just sewn the main pocket back there, and now we take the front side skirt that has the lining pocket and we place them right sides together. Now we are going to sew these two pockets together around there. It'll be sewn twice, once and then again 1/4 inch from there to reinforce. So I'll just pin that along so that I have pinned that, and I'll show you this up closer. This is where the seam allowance would come and cover that. So I have pinned that out of the way, and I have matched that seam to the one at the back with that pin so that they are correct. And I'm going to start sewing as close as I can get to that without getting in the way of this, so probably right there, and then curve and finish here on the top. Now I will sew a second row parallel to the other just to have this seam a little bit more reinforced. So you can see 2 rows there that will reinforce this pocket. Now this is done the exact same on the other side, and then we can actually sew the side seams. Okay, after sewing the pocket bag together twice, I have pinned the side seams there. I have done the same thing on the other side, but I'm going to be working on this one. From the top waist edge, you will see that first notch that we were working with the pockets, and then below you will see the second one. That area needs to be left open so you can put your hand in your pocket. So we will be sewing from there up to there and reinforcing. Now if you can see, I have pinned these together, matching them right on top of each other, making sure that the seam won't hit that understitching that's already there. It'll be right next to it. Then we pick up here and we start there and reinforce. Same, these seams are right on top of each other, and from there we sew all the way down to the bottom. So we do this on both of the side seams. This one is very short, it's just from here to that notch there. Okay, so that little section was sewn. Let's see how that looks. It looks perfect. That's how it looks, and that's how the entrance of the pocket will look. On one side the main fabric, on the other side the lining fabric, and that looks very clean. So we do the same down below, starting from there. This will be a little bit bulky there, but then it's just a regular seam all the way down to the hem. Just below the pocket bag right there, we'll do a little snip that will allow us to press the side seams open from the pocket bag downwards. Okay, so there are the side seams. There is the area that's partially open for you to put your hand in. So we will repeat this on the other side, and then I'll just neaten this out and press the seam open here from that little snip downwards. This is how the side seam is going to look. This is the front skirt, this is the back skirt, and the pocket will be towards the front, of course, so you can put your hand to the front, and you'll see the lining pocket underneath. On the top, I've pinned this together, and this needs to be basted on so it will stay firm there. And here you can see where I snipped and was able to press the seam allowance open all the way to the bottom. You see there that I've closed my pocket pieces together in a separate step, moving the seam allowance away, and then I've gone and picked up and finished the side seams, including part of the pocket and then going all the way down. This is one way that you can do this. I decided to do it like that with this one because it was super bulky. I didn't want to do this other method that I'm going to show you with this one. So it's all about the fabric sometimes. You can make decisions and sew things a little bit different, but they will turn out exactly the same. So let's see how it would be a little bit easier, just a little faster really, if you're sewing this onto a light woven skirt or a knit garment. Okay, you've just seen how I sewed it in detail with my winter coat. And one thing I'm going to do different with this one, just so you can know that there's many ways to do things, is to sew the pocket bag pivot here and then go continuous down the side seam without sewing it separately. In the previous one, you saw that I pushed the seam allowance away, just sewed the pocket bag separately, and then I went and sewed this little piece, and then from there I picked it up and went down separately. You can do things many ways. That's just the way I felt was going to be best with my coat, because the fabric was bulkier and I thought I had better control to be accurate starting here on its own and not pivoting. But I think with this one, because it's lighter, you can try this. So I mentioned that there is a little piece up here that we need to sew together, and you can see my purple thread. I put my pin through the thread there, coming out the other side exactly right there, so that I know that they match. And I did the same there at the bottom. You can see my outer edge right there, because the one on the inner edge is the understitching, so that's matching there, and it's on the other side the same. The seam allowances are always pointing towards the pockets because they've been understitched that way. So I'm just going to sew that little bit. I'll be sewing right next to that seam there. I don't want to be inside, or else you're going to see understitching. I want to sew just on the outside right there and reinforce. Okay, and now I'm going to start sewing on the top of the pocket bag. And you can see how much easier it is to have serged everything before. I don't need to worry about finishing anything. Now we're about to get to the pivot area. Pivot all the way around, and now I can pick up the side seam. Okay, this is how my pocket looks inside. It's super neat. Everything has been serged. There's nothing raw. Look, if you haven't serged prior, how are you going to get in there with that seam right there? How are you going to serge this without this getting in the way? You know, it's just so much easier to do it beforehand. So this is where it's controversial. You saw me on my coat snip into there, and you'll see a lot of instructions that tell you to do that. This is the back of the skirt. You can tell because I have the same main pocket right here, and usually you press seams this way. Now if I wanted to press the seam open, I would get a little bit of a bulk right there because this is all like that, but I do not want to snip. I really dislike weakening my fabric, creating raw areas, so I'm not going to do that. If I open this up, this is the front skirt here. This is how the pocket is going to be placed on the body right there. So this pocket will be anchored into the waist there, and the seams are all going to come to the front. Now in this particular skirt that I'm using this pattern piece from, there will be gathers here. So I'm not going to be attaching this yet until I have this gathered and I know how much gathers I need to attach it onto the bodice. So the pocket won't be gathered, but the skirt will. When I have that sorted and attached to the bodice with the gathers already there, then you can sew that together. But for now it's just loose. Or you might be sewing it onto a garment where this is just going to be flat there and there's no gathers on the front or pleats or anything, and then at this point you could go ahead and baste it right there. Here I've got my fake skirt on the pressing board, and I'm just going to press everything. You can see this is the front of the skirt. All the seams are coming this way. It's the way it's been sewn. My instinct would be to just press everything forward, these seams of the skirt, and just leave it like that. You know, there's this thing that people say that they have to be pressed to the back. And sure, I would press it to the back if I just had a simple regular seam. But there is a pocket here, and why would I want to snip into there? Now, if that doesn't bother you, go ahead and snip into this top layer right here that you're seeing, and then you could snip and press it open. Or if you wanted to press both layers to the back, you would have to snip through both layers underneath the pocket, and then you could press it to the back. But, you know, I'm not going to be strict about those rules when there's a pocket there. Maybe you can see it. There it is. This is the front of the pant or the skirt. You put your hand in there. There's enough space to put your hand through there. When you put your hand in and the pocket opens, this is the back. And that's why the back had to have the main fabric sewn onto it. But on the front, you could get away with something different that matches. Mine is super contrasting, but if this was a regular garment, I would have used something pink or something black something lighter weight basically. It is understitched in there, so you're not going to be able to see it, and the pocket's just going to be there, barely noticeable. It's got a section that's closed, and then it's closed again with the side seam, and you have that opening there, and it's very neat. You can clearly see that I'm trying to minimize snipping. I really don't want to do that. I've shown you why you would want to do that and why I've done it on my coats and why I wouldn't do it on a lighter fabric. But the decision is yours. If you want to do that, you are welcome to. I think you will see the snip in a lot of pattern instructions. Just know that you don't have to do it if you really don't want to. In my decision making, I would never snip. I would just press all the seams to the front. I really don't mind that. Or you could even press them open and just have a little fold on the top there. It's not going to annoy you. So think about it. If snipping doesn't bother you, go ahead. Another example with pockets I wanted to show you was adding them to something you already have. It could be some garment that you have ready to wear, or something that you've already made for yourself and you're wearing and you think, oh, I'd love to have pockets in here. You can. I have a skirt that I made in 2019. I have worn it a couple times. The inverted box pleats there give it a really nice shape, gives you that fullness, but it doesn't give you the bulk here. I think at the waist and hips it stays sort of flat. It's a type of flowy skirt, has a lot of ease at the hips, there are pleats there, and I don't really think a pocket is going to add any bulk or is going to be uncomfortable. So I thought, why not take this skirt a little bit apart and just add some pockets there. You can do it for sure. If you have lost your sojo and aren't really inspired to sew things, you don't know what to make next, maybe you would want to do something like this that's a little bit more specific, more focused on an outcome that I know you will enjoy if you like pockets, and you can add a pocket to something that you already have. So let's see a little bit about that. Something else you can do if you have time and you're bored and you've lost your sojo and you want to do something different is take apart something you've already made that you've worn and you know you want to add pockets to. That's what I've done with this skirt. I've seam ripped the waistband partially there on the top, and I've seam ripped the whole side seam again. I didn't really need to undo the whole side seam, but I did. These edges had been serged previously because that's how I sewed my skirt, so I don't need to worry about that. I made this skirt using the calispell dress from Each to Stitch. This one has a skirt and a bodice. In this case, I just used the skirt to make a skirt and not the dress. But there is a pattern piece. So you can see on the pattern piece there's a notch there and a notch there. I've just transferred those marks onto my side seam there. I have a notch there and I have a notch there. I have cut strips of interfacing that will cover that distance slightly over it, like that. And I'm just going to go and fuse these on to stabilize this pocket entrance area. This is done after the fact because, you know, this skirt didn't have pockets. So I have 4 of these. I'll do this on both sides. Here's the inside of my skirt that I'm adding pockets to, and I want to show you something that you might encounter when you're sewing huge pockets like this. This is just longer. So let me put this pocket piece on top. This is the example I've just shown you. Look how smaller it is in comparison. That's why when I was sewing the pocket here and doing the pivot there, then I went directly down to the side seam. That's because the size of the pocket is quite shallow. But this one that's deeper, you will pivot here the same and go down, but then you're going to have to return and close it up higher. You can see that the pocket closure is up higher, so you have to reinforce that area there, because obviously you can't have a pocket that's that big, that's, you know, and have such a huge opening. It's just too big. You might find that with larger pockets you can pivot and everything, but the marking to close the pocket will be up higher. In this case, because the pocket was so little, you know, you could just pivot, close at the seam allowance and then go down, because that was actually where the pocket was supposed to be closed, because it's just smaller. So as always, I'm checking that both seam allowances are going towards the pockets, and I'm aligning this seam to the one over here so that everything matches and my seams don't move and I end up with part of the understitching showing. It's about 1 inch that I have to sew and reinforce there. And just pick up on the side seam again. And it's not a bad thing that this area gets reinforced a little extra as well, because this could be a high stress area here. This is the top of the pocket, and you can see that it matches the shape of this waist perfectly. This pocket comes with this pattern, so of course it's going to match perfectly. So you would just pin that and anchor that, sew it down, and then I can reattach this piece of waistband I had unsewn. You saw that I had to stabilize those pocket openings after the skirt was made. You know, when I made it, I just sewed the side seams like regular. The edges were already serged, so that was good. And I just went there, added my pocket piece, and the pattern I used, the skirt, actually did have a pocket there. But if I hadn't have had the pocket, I would have just ironed my skirt really nice and flat, put paper on it, and go through the exact same process I did to create my paper pattern from an actual pattern piece. I would have just done it on the skirt, probably used chalk to draw out the shape until I was happy, and then transfer that onto paper. In this case, this one did have a pattern piece. So, you know, you can have a lot of fun and it could turn out super nice. And now I have this skirt that didn't have pockets before, and now it does. There is the pocket opening. It fits my hand really well. I have a 6-inch opening, and I have a pocket deep enough that can hold my phone. My phone is way down there, nice and safe. I would never do this because I always carry a handbag, but you might want to carry your phone around in a skirt that has a deep pocket like this. So just know that you can make your own pockets. You can make them as big as you want. If your pattern does have a pocket piece, and you think, oh, it looks really small, just make it bigger. It's not going to change anything. The technique will be the same. And just on the inside, it'll look a little bit different, but you'll be much happier that the pocket has the size that you want it to be. You can use any fabric for the lining. The piece that goes sewn onto the front can be anything really, because if you understitch it nicely, it will never be seen. So that's why I have purple right there. And then I have the main fabric right there. I'm happy I had scraps left from this project that I made in 2019 so I could cut out my pocket piece. Otherwise, I would have found something grey or something black maybe to use there. It would have still looked nice. And you can do that if you want to add pockets to something that you have from the shops that doesn't have it. Have fun. I hope this is helpful. I'm working on a pattern test of a dress. It's woven. It has a skirt with these types of pockets. And I'm going to use a really nice lightweight woven, and I'm going to film how to do these exact type of pockets using French seams. It's beautiful, beautiful inside. You're not going to need a serger, and it will be the most perfect finish inside if you like going the extra mile. So look out for that video about inseam pockets with French seams as well. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is helpful. I know 99% of people that sew like putting pockets on things. I hope you give it a go. I know I'm the 1% that doesn't really appreciate them that much, but it's not about me, it's about you, and that's why I've created this video for you. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you again very soon with some Sybil Illusion skirts. Bye.